It was one of those nights where the air feels thick, heavy, almost like the world is holding its breath. The kind of night where even the smallest sound echoes louder than usual. I found myself standing at the iron gate of the old cemetery just as the sun dipped below the horizon, swallowing the last light. Alone. No one else around for miles. You might wonder why anyone would want to spend the night in a place like this, a graveyard, with the dead lying just inches beneath the cold ground. Honestly, I wasn't sure myself at first. Was it curiosity? A dare? Or maybe something darker, an urge to feel something real, raw, and terrifying? I'd heard the stories before, the ones whispered on Reddit, the creepypasta threads where people shared their chilling encounters in places like this. Graveyards at night are supposed to be silent, still, except when they aren't. So, there I was, key in hand, ready to unlock a gate that should have been locked tight, stepping into a world that most people avoid after dark. The sky above was a deep, endless black, peppered with stars that seemed cold and distant. A cold wind blew softly, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The cemetery stretched before me, rows of weathered tombstones, ancient trees casting long shadows that twisted and stretched with the moonlight. At first, it was peaceful. Too peaceful. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring and your skin crawl at the same time. I could hear the crunch of dry leaves beneath my boots and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. But no other sounds, no footsteps, no voices, nothing that suggested I was sharing this space with another living soul. I had planned this for weeks, thinking I'd prepare myself with enough flashlights, blankets, and snacks to survive a night alone with only the dead for company. But as I stepped deeper inside, something about the place felt different. It wasn't just the chill or the darkness, it was the feeling that I was being watched. Why do we fear graveyards? Is it just because they remind us of death? Or is there something else lurking in these quiet corners, something waiting? I remember pausing near a particularly old tombstone, the name barely legible, the stone cracked and worn by time. I ran my fingers over the cold surface and wondered about the life that once was. Did this person have fears like mine? Did they feel alone in the dark? The night stretched ahead, full of unknowns. Every breath I took seemed louder in the still air. My heartbeat quickened as shadows danced around me, making familiar shapes strange and threatening. As I settled down near a cluster of tombstones, pulling my jacket tighter, I realized this wasn't going to be just another story to tell. Something about this night was going to change everything. What would happen in the silence of a cemetery at midnight? Would I encounter the supernatural, or just my own fears? The night was just beginning. The moment I pushed open the gate, a faint creak echoed into the still night. The sound felt heavier than it should have, like the cemetery itself was warning me to turn back. But I didn't. I stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the thick darkness in a narrow beam. The air was cooler now, almost biting, with a dampness that clung to my skin. The ground beneath my feet was soft, the earth giving slightly as I walked on fallen leaves and patches of moss. Every step seemed to sink a little deeper into silence, as if the cemetery swallowed sound whole. I moved slowly, eyes scanning the rows of tombstones that stretched endlessly in every direction. Some were tall and ornate, carved with angels or twisted vines, while others were simple slabs, cracked and leaning with age. The dates on some went back hundreds of years, people long forgotten, their stories buried beneath layers of dust and history. There was something hypnotic about the quiet, the way the moonlight spilled over cold stone, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant call of a lone owl. I could feel my breathing steady, my heart slowing, as if the cemetery was absorbing my anxiety and turning it into stillness. But that calm didn't last long. A sudden snap, a twig breaking somewhere behind me, made my head whip around. Nothing there. Just shadows shifting between the trees. I told myself it was probably a raccoon or a stray cat, but the prickling on the back of my neck told a different story. I tried to focus on the sounds that surrounded me, the gentle rustle of leaves, the soft hum of the night insects, the faint whistle of wind through the branches. Yet, beneath all that, I thought I heard something else, a whisper, barely audible, like someone muttering words just out of reach. Was it my imagination? Maybe. Or maybe this place was alive in a way I couldn't understand yet. I stopped near an old marble statue, an angel with cracked wings and hollow eyes. Its face was smooth from years of rain, but it still held a quiet sadness, like it was mourning something lost long ago. I reached out to touch the cold stone, and the air around me dropped suddenly. My breath fogged in front of my face, though it wasn't cold enough for that. A chill ran through me, and I pulled my jacket tighter around myself. The feeling was heavy, pressing down like the weight of 1,000 silent watchers. I kept walking, pushing deeper into the cemetery's heart. The path wasn't clear anymore, moss and dirt covered what once might have been a walkway. I tripped over a root and caught myself on a low gravestone, its inscription worn away by time. Suddenly, the hair on my arm stood up. A breeze stirred, but it wasn't the usual wind. It was colder, almost icy, brushing past me like a ghost's fingertips. I froze, trying to tell my mind to stay rational. "You're just scared," I whispered to myself. "This is just an old cemetery. Nothing's going to happen." But as I spoke, the whispering came again. Louder this time. Words I couldn't make out but definitely there. I spun around, flashlight swinging wildly in my hand, searching for the source. Nothing. Just trees, shadows, and the faint shimmer of moonlight on stone. My heart hammered. I swallowed hard and decided to sit for a moment, pulling my blanket out and settling against a sturdy oak tree. The bark was rough against my back, but it grounded me, kept me from floating away in my fear. I closed my eyes briefly, listening to the night, the creaks, the distant calls, the whispers that might have been real or might have been in my head. Then I heard it. A soft thud. Not far from where I sat. Something hitting the ground, or maybe a footstep. I froze. My eyes snapped open, shining my flashlight in the direction of the sound. The beam caught nothing but a thick cluster of bushes and tangled branches. I tried calling out, but my voice felt small and weak in the vast emptiness. "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. The night was quiet again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. My mind raced. Was it a prank? A stranger lurking? Or something else? Something not quite human. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus on facts. The cemetery was old, public, and known to attract night wanderers. Maybe someone else was here, hiding or playing tricks. I stood up, brushing dirt from my pants, and began to walk again, careful now, alert to every sound, every shadow. The trees seemed to close in, their branches like twisted fingers reaching down to snag me. The wind picked up, swirling leaves into small whirlwinds that danced around my feet. I passed a section of graves surrounded by wrought iron fences, the paint peeling and rust eating away at the metal. One grave caught my eye, fresh flowers placed carefully beside a stone etched with the name Eleanor. The flowers looked out of place in this forgotten corner, and a sudden wave of sadness washed over me. I imagined who Eleanor might have been, and who still visited her grave in the dead of night. A noise again, a low moan carried on the wind. I stopped dead, listening. Was that a voice? A cry? Or just the wind twisting through the trees? The hair on my neck prickled once more as the shadows seemed to flicker. I realized I'd been holding my breath, and finally exhaled slowly, trying to calm my pounding heart. This night was testing me. Every sense on high alert, every moment charged with the unknown. But despite the fear, I was drawn deeper. There was something here, something waiting. And I wasn't ready to leave yet. By now, the moon had risen higher, casting an eerie silver light that made everything around me look both beautiful and unnatural. The trees swayed softly in the chill breeze, and the shadows they cast seemed to reach out, stretching toward me like dark fingers. Every step I took felt heavier, as if the cemetery itself was pulling me deeper into its grasp. My flashlight flickered for a moment, then steadied, but that split second was enough to send a jolt of panic through me. In the brief darkness, I thought I saw movement just beyond the beam, a figure, maybe, standing still between the gravestones. But when the light returned, there was nothing there. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the shadows, the way my mind played games in the dark. But even as I told myself that, a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. The silence of the night started to shift. The peaceful quiet I'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by something far more unsettling. A soft rustling sound drifted from the bushes to my left, and I turned sharply. Nothing. The air suddenly felt thicker, harder to breathe, and I caught myself glancing over my shoulder far too often. I was no longer just a visitor here. I was a target. Then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was just the wind, maybe the dry leaves brushing against one another. But the more I listened, the clearer it became that those sounds were voices. Low, urgent, barely audible. Words in a language I didn't recognize, but the tone was unmistakable, pleading, desperate, maybe even angry. I strained to make out the words, but they slipped away like smoke before I could grasp them. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. I told myself to stay calm, to keep my wits about me. But fear was crawling up my spine like icy fingers, and my breath came in short, shallow gasps. As I moved forward, the temperature seemed to drop again. My breath turned to mist in the flashlight's beam, and a sudden coldness wrapped around me like a shroud. Then I saw it. A pair of eyes. Not glowing, but dark and hollow, staring at me from behind a crumbling tombstone. I froze. The eyes didn't blink. They didn't move. They just watched, unblinking and unmoving, full of a sadness and menace that shook me to my core. I swallowed hard and forced myself to take a step closer. The eyes disappeared, as if whoever or whatever they belonged to had melted back into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, circling around me now like a storm of voices, filling my head with frantic energy. I tried to follow the sound, but it was impossible to tell where they came from. Every time I thought I was moving toward the source, it shifted, leading me deeper into the maze of gravestones. My flashlight flickered again, and this time, it went out. Total darkness. I was blind. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for the spare batteries in my pocket. My hands shook, and I dropped one of them on the cold ground. I cursed under my breath, heart hammering in my chest. As I knelt to pick it up, I heard it clearly for the first time, a breath. Not mine. Slow, steady, and dangerously close. I snapped my head up, but the night was empty, save for the shadows that danced in the faint moonlight. I didn't know if I wanted to run or stay. The rational part of me screamed to leave, to get out of there before something worse happened. But another part, the part that had driven me here in the first place, pushed me onward. I replaced the batteries and flicked the flashlight back on. The beam cut through the blackness, and I was relieved to see the familiar shapes of tombstones again. But something was wrong. The cemetery didn't feel the same. The rows of graves that I had memorized now looked twisted, unfamiliar. Paths I had walked moments before were gone or blocked by thick undergrowth. I realized I was lost. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it was just the dark playing tricks. But every shadow seemed to move, every breeze whispered threats. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing on the gravel behind me. I stopped and listened. They stopped too. I started walking again, faster this time. The footsteps followed. Closer. Closer. I dared a glance behind me. Nothing but empty space. But the sound was there, haunting, relentless, like the very ground was chasing me. Suddenly, I felt something brush past my arm, cold, dry, like dead leaves scraping against skin. I spun around, swinging my flashlight wildly. A figure was there. Tall, thin, almost translucent. It flickered like smoke, shifting and changing shape with the wind. Its eyes were empty sockets, and its mouth opened in a silent scream. I stumbled backward, heart racing, fear crushing down on me like a weight. I ran. Not looking back. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that thing, away from the whispers, away from the eyes that watched from the shadows. The night swallowed me whole. I ran blindly through the graveyard, the cold night air burning in my lungs. My flashlight swung wildly, casting frantic beams that barely cut through the thick darkness. The uneven ground was treacherous, roots, stones, and tombstones lurking beneath the surface. I tripped more than once, catching myself just before hitting the ground. But I didn't stop. Behind me, I could still hear it, the slow, deliberate footsteps, echoing closer and closer. But every time I glanced back, the shadows held nothing but emptiness. Then I reached a clearing, a small, open patch in the heart of the cemetery. Moonlight bathed the space in silver, and for a moment, I thought I was safe. But the silence was shattered by a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I froze, every muscle trembling with fear. The hair on my arms stood on end. The growl grew louder, deeper, like some ancient beast awakening from the depths. And then I saw it. A figure emerged from the darkness at the edge of the clearing. It wasn't human, at least not anymore. Its skin was pale and translucent, veins pulsing beneath the surface like twisted roots. Its eyes glowed a dull, sickly yellow, and its mouth stretched into a grotesque grin filled with sharp, jagged teeth. It moved with a jerky, unnatural rhythm, limbs twisting in impossible ways. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The thing took a step forward, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to tremble. I backed away slowly, but it kept advancing, never breaking eye contact. Then, as if sensing my fear, it lunged. I stumbled backward, falling hard against a gravestone. Pain shot through my side, but I barely noticed. The creature was almost on top of me now. My flashlight flickered again, then died completely. Total darkness engulfed me. I felt its breath, cold and rotten, on my face. Then a sharp pain, like icy fingers digging into my skin. A scream tore through the silence, mine. And just as suddenly as it had come, the creature vanished. The night returned to its quiet stillness, broken only by my ragged breathing. I lay there for what felt like hours, heart racing, body shaking. The pain in my side was real, but the terror was something else, something that lingered deep inside, refusing to let go. Slowly, I pushed myself up, wiping dirt and blood from my hands. The clearing was empty. No sign of the creature, no footprints, no disturbed earth. But I knew what I had seen. I had been marked. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound echoed like a warning. I didn't stop until I reached the gate I had entered through hours ago. As I slipped through and locked it behind me, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. I never wanted to come back. The moment I stepped outside the cemetery gate, the weight I'd been carrying all night seemed to lift slightly, but the terror didn't disappear. It clung to me like a second skin, a constant reminder that something had followed me from that place, something I couldn't explain or forget. As the sun began to rise, the world slowly returned to its normal rhythms. Birds started their morning songs, and the streets nearby buzzed with life again. But I felt disconnected, as if I was living two separate realities, one where the day was bright and ordinary, and another where the night held secrets too dark to share. That night changed me. It left cracks in my mind where doubt and fear seeped in, filling me with questions that had no answers. Was what I saw real? Or was it just my imagination, twisted by the silence and shadows? Sleep didn't come easy after that. Every creak in my house, every flicker of a shadow on my wall, sent my heart racing. The memories of those hollow eyes, the growl that shook the earth, and the cold breath on my skin haunted me long after I left the cemetery behind. Friends asked why I did it, how I could stay so calm. But the truth is, I wasn't calm at all. I was terrified, frozen in fear, caught between disbelief and the raw, undeniable reality of what I experienced. I stopped going to that part of town. I avoided cemeteries, no matter how curious I felt before. The stories on Reddit, the creepypastas, the ASMR horror narrations, they all felt different now. They weren't just stories. They were warnings. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear whispers in the dark, voices carried on the wind, just beyond the edge of hearing. If you ever find yourself tempted to spend the night alone in a cemetery, ask yourself this: are you ready to face what's waiting in the shadows? Because once you step inside, there's no telling what might follow you home. Thanks for listening to my story. If you want more tales like this, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. You never know what other secrets I might uncover next.